En mörk uendelig mark.
Welcome to Views from the World Tree. On today's episode, we uncover the mystery that is the Yeti, or, in common terms, the Abominable Snowman. And now, on with the show.
Under en himmellag.
Yes, I see. Good news, everyone!
So for news segment this week, I don't have any world news, but just a personal update for me. I spent most of the morning working on clearing out a tree stump, and I have decided that clearing tree stumps is terrible work that I would not wish on my worst enemy. So, well, maybe on my worst enemy, but so when we moved in, there was a big maple in the backyard that is, I don't know why the previous owner planted it where they did. I'm sure they had a reason, but I would love to hear what that reason was. But it was about like a foot from our back fence, and then it had started to overgrow like our sprinkler control box where so out here in Idaho we have irrigation water that's separate from all of the culinary, the potable water. So it's right where that comes into our property. And so, I need to be able to get in there. And when we moved in the summer, I just cut the maple back. I don't know what kind of maple it was. Not the good kind that makes syrup, that's for sure. But it was causing problems, and there was all kinds of spiders living in it, and it was getting in the way. So we decided it had to go, and it had been cut back a few times, so it was really scraggly, lots of stabby branches. Anyway, so we cut it back, dug all around the base of it, took an axe to the roots that we could see, and it was just, it was holding on. And so I was like, okay, well, so I went and got my high lift jack off of my truck, which is the kind of the big like farm jack with the big handle that goes up and down, and wrapped a chain around it, jacked it up a few times, and the thing just had so many roots, and like it must have had a big thick taproot in the center that I just couldn't get to with the axe. I ended up putting the chain around it and lifting it with the jack 3 or 4 times, and just was holding on. So I was like, okay, I'm done being nice. So my house has a entrance on the side that's big enough to get a vehicle through. So I went and got the little Toyota truck, drove it into the backyard. I was like, okay, I'm done playing. Hooked up a chain to it, hooked a strap to the Toyota, put it in 4 low, hit the gas, and just ripped that sucker out of the ground. So I am pleased to report it is now gone. It was about 400 pounds. So we estimate, my wife and I were able to lift it into the back of the truck just barely. So,
Man,
I will put pictures up with the show notes if anybody is interested to see it. But
that's funny. There's nothing quite as satisfying as ripping a tree out with a truck, I have to admit.
It's true. I have to give credit to my wife, though. She may be a city girl, but she was out there right next to me helping me. So she did get a little nervous when I told her I was going to go all redneck on it and just jerk it out, but it worked okay.
You didn't go all redneck. You were using a small Toyota and not a John Deere.
That's true. I could have brought the full-size Ford back there, but I also didn't want to have broken sprinkler lines come springtime, so.
I mean, the Toyota's like bringing a BB gun to a war zone. It's not going to do much.
Nope, it's precision. precision instrument.
There you go.
Anyway, that's my update. I guess maybe we should note that we are recording this early because of the Christmas holiday, so probably be a little light on news.
Yeah, for sure. I was about to say not much has happened since we recorded 3 days ago. For me, but one thing that I have been doing is I've been headed back to the gym, and I know I mentioned that a while ago, but I decided to follow a rowing program from Annie Thor's daughter. She's a 3-time world CrossFit champion, and she is kicking my butt. It's one of the hardest fitness programs I've ever done in my life. The first session was 4 500-meter sprints with a minute rest between, which was manageable. And then the quote-unquote recovery session was 6 2,000-meter sprints, so almost 12 kilometers. And by the end, a good half an hour of rowing, I was dead. But
I bet.
I'm enjoying the challenge, I have to admit. Doing a little bit more cardio instead of just weight training or throw on heavy objects is a little bit different for me, but I'm really enjoying the way my body's responding to it. I don't think I'm ever going to become a runner or anything, but
Having been a runner in high school and college, you're not missing anything other than screwed up knees and cartilage loss.
I played rugby. I've already got it. I don't need to aggravate it, right?
Yeah. I've never done rowing, at least not as a workout. I've done it while fishing and other things, but so what you're saying is you'll be ready to join the long ship and go a Vikinger.
Yeah, I think I could probably row 12 kilometers if I had 40 other people helping carry the load. I have to tell you, doing it solo on a rowing machine is actually kind of hard.
I bet.
So, yeah. Other than that, this little fitness thing, I don't want to go too deep into it because next week is going to be our resolution and kind of year in review type of episode. So I'll hold off on going too deep on that. But I hosted my first ever little Yule gathering after our recording session on Thursday. So
cool.
That was fun. It was more of just a barbecue and lighting candles and hanging out and telling stories and reflecting on the year. But it was a lot of fun. It was something that I haven't done before, and I look forward to adding more of these kind of friends, hygge type nights into my life.
Yeah, it does sound like fun.
So, yeah, light on the news, like Adam said.
All right, well, main topic this week is all about the Yeti, the Abominable Snowman, as he's commonly known. So, also just heads up, this will probably be a fairly quick episode. We know that a lot of people are going to be traveling. Probably won't have a lot of time to tune in this week, which is fine. So we did want to make sure that we had something for you, though. And it had been a while since we had either a conspiracy or a mythological creature episode. But so the Yeti, what is the Yeti? He is an ape-like creature, large, bipedal, covered in brown, gray, white hair. So really similar to Bigfoot, just giant humanoid covered in hair.
Yeah. There's a myth in Russia, and the cryptobiologists, I think that's what they're called. No. Mythobiologists? Whatever kind of biologist studies mythological beings. says that its closest relative, according to like mythology, is in Russia, and it's a being called the Chichuna. And this is a 6 to 7 foot tall creature. Witnesses say that it's a Neanderthal or some other human relative that wears pelts of many different animals. This is why it has the different colored hair, according to eyewitnesses. But the one thing that they all say is on his or her forearms, there is white, thick hair that kind of looks patchy, almost like polar bear type of fur on the forearms.
Interesting. So I know that you did a little bit more research than me this week. What specifically makes a Yeti and not a Bigfoot, like the creature in my neck of the woods?
Everything that I found says that the Yeti is isolated to Himalayas, and if you believe in the Russian myth, Siberia. So it's Asiatic.
Welcome to the Himalayas! Abominable! Can you believe that? Do I look abominable to you? Hey, why can't they call me the adorable snowman or the agreeable snowman, for crying out loud? I'm a nice guy.
So he likes the cold?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, your Bigfoot likes the cold too, apparently, because I read on Coast to Coast AM that there was recent sightings up in Alaska. So,
Oh, maybe they just evolved in parallel on opposite ends of the world then.
that's an interesting thought.
And I've never heard of a Chichuna, so it's interesting.
Yeah, that was a fascinating one for me. I found it. It was in the Wikipedia article, and I kind of followed the links and went, "Oh, this is fascinating," because it's not a sighting from like Moscow or anything. It's the steppe tribes and the native Siberians. So it's people kind of away from the normal society. These Inuit tribes that are talking about the Chichuna.
Not to be confused with chinchilla, which is what I thought it was when I read it at first, and was terrified that there was a 7-foot tall chinchilla running around somewhere.
Oh my gosh, so fluffy. That would be scary, especially if it got wet.
Yeah.
300 pounds of fur weighing down that 7-foot tall chinchilla.
Oh man. I shudder to think what chinchilla teeth would look like if they were scaled up to that size. But
sorry, I'm going to go down a little bit of a rail. I'm going off the rail.
Go for it.
One of my coworkers put up a picture of a chinchilla on his whiteboard during finals week, and he called it his service animal. His
his emotional support animal.
His emotional support chinchilla. In case anybody gets stressed out about finals, they can look at this picture and feel at ease.
Nice. They are cute little buggers.
It made me smile. It was kind of a clever ploy. Anyway, back on topic.
So evidence for the Yeti, it's kind of the same gamut of evidence for most of the conspiracy theories and urban legends that we've talked about. There's your typical grainy video that looks like it was taken on a camera phone from the early 2000s. Eyewitness sightings, which, depending on who it is, may or may not be believable. Photos that look like they were taken on a potato or something. Footprints, so casts of footprints that have emerged and supposedly all point to evidence for this creature's existence. One thing I don't know, with all of the cameras that we all carry around in our pockets these days, and the high fidelity lenses that these things have on them. I don't understand why all of the pictures and all the photographic evidence that keeps supposedly popping up for these creatures hasn't evolved with the times. Like they haven't caught up to current technology yet.
That's fair. That has made me kind of question it myself. My biggest guess, living in Colorado, we get a lot of pictures of mountain lions that you don't know you're taking a picture of a mountain lion. You're taking a picture of a family, mountain lions in the background. You're taking a picture of a deer, mountain lions in the background. And I honestly think it's people either not taking a picture of said animal and finding it later and then trying to enhance it, or they're all fake.
Yeah, that's fair. It kind of sounds like the two possibilities I had in mind as well. But
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The mountain lion tangent. What I meant to say is like, because the mountain lion's never in focus, it's never what you're taking a picture of. It always looks blurry in the pictures that you see. Sorry.
no,
Finishing that loop.
That makes sense. So maybe some of them are from game cams that hunters put up, and the game camera will capture a picture of a deer or something, and then in the background you see this extra set of eyes and this tall, lanky, hairy dude.
Possibly. With where it's found, though, with it being found in the Himalayas, where there's not a lot of trees. Well, there's no trees. It's above the tree line. Not a lot of shrubs. Constantly under snow. Horrible winds. I can't even imagine diet like it. What's it eating up there? Besides dead Everest expeditioners.
Oh, it's like on Monsters Inc. He eats snow cones, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Snow cone? No, don't worry. It's lemon. How about you, big fella?
Yep. That's one thing that always puzzled me, though. But hey. What can you say? Anyway, I guess before we go too deep into it, we talked about evidence for. Evidence against. Have you ever watched Destination Truth with Josh Gates?
I've seen ads for it. I don't know that I've ever bothered to watch it, though.
All right. It's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite archaeologists, paleoarchaeologists. He's an incredible historian, and I highly recommend it. But his first show, Destination Truth, it was on the Sci-Fi Channel. Really gives it great credibility, right? But he went to the Himalayas twice in search of this Yeti, and he did nighttime searches and daytime searches, and found a footprint that looked really quite convincing to me. Found tufts of hair, and even was allowed to take pictures of there's a Tibetan monastery that actually has a Yeti skull or a Yeti scalp that they use in like celebrations and whatnot. And he was able to handle that and grab some hair from that and do a DNA analysis, which is really special. These monks believed so with their heart that they had a Yeti skull, gave him some hair. Anyway, analyzing all of that, DNA came back. The hair that he found out in the wild belonged to a yak.
Okay.
Kind of. The hair from the scalp at this Tibetan monastery. It was there wasn't a lot of DNA left in it to do a full typography, so it's inconclusive. Of course, it's inconclusive. Good TV is always inconclusive. but they did say that it does not appear to be primate in nature.
Okay.
Is what they gave. And so some of the biggest naysayers are like, well, even the DNA from this thing, from this relic, came back as inconclusive. And most folklore historians actually believe that it is probably wolves or yaks, possibly bears that are up in there. The Asiatic brown bear and black bear are found in the Himalayas as well.
Mm.
They tend to walk on hind legs when they're trying to be intimidating. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a bear or two up on their hind legs. I could see how you could make that assumption. So we wanted to go into, at this point, just a little bit of the history of the myth, where it comes from. We've talked about, what it looks like, relatives, evidence, both for and against. Where did the myth originate? So looking at the pre-Buddhist part of history, there is a people, and I apologize, I don't know how to say this word, the Lepcha people.
Yeah, sure.
So they are the indigenous people of like India, Nepal, Tibet, that region. And they have a being called the Glacier Being that they worship as the god of the hunt, which could potentially be a source of inspiration for the myth.
The indigenous religion of Tibet, which a lot of Tibetan Buddhists pulls their philosophy from, is called Bon, or Bon. It's B-O with the 2 dot things N. So I don't know how to say that and do justice to the Tibetan language, but they venerate somebody called the Wild Man in certain ceremonies. And the Wild Man is depicted as an ape-like creature, and they carry a large stone weapon, and they make loud whistling noises. So they believe that might be a basis of the myth. If you've ever watched Finding Bigfoot on the History Channel, one of the noises that our version of the Yeti is purported to make is a loud whistling or almost a screaming noise. And it's interesting, the correlation. I don't know if Bigfoot hunters here in the United States got that from Bon culture, or if it kind of divergent and we both kind of have similar myths. But it's interesting.
Yeah, maybe. It's like Newton and Leibniz, right? So
Right. Except they work together.
yeah.
Don't
So a little
believe
bit
what people
more.
say.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut
Oh
you
no!
off.
Don't believe what people say about Newton and Leibniz. They knew each other, or Leibniz, and they corresponded.
So some more historical source, but a little bit more modern. So in 1921, there was a British survey of Mount Everest during the reconnaissance expedition. This was led by a man named Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury. And they found some footprints, which he claimed looked like wolf prints. And Sherpa guides attributed the prints to what they called the Wild Man of the Snows, which was, again, apologize for the pronunciation, Metokangmi, or Man Bear Snowman is kind of a close translation. And so it's believed that Abominable Snowman could have come from this name that the Sherpas attributed to the prince.
That's basically the history. We've kind of covered super modern with Josh Gates all the way down to pre-Buddhist things. So I guess now is the time where you and I discuss with the limited knowledge that we have. I mean, I'm looking forward to our Bigfoot podcast in the future, but with what we know what do you think? As far as footprints.
So footprints are interesting because they are kind of a more tangible physical evidence. I would probably put more credence in that than in like a grainy doctored photograph. However, so having grown up hunting and spending a lot of time in the outdoors looking at animal footprints, the footprints don't always look like the actual foot. So you'll see a print, and because of the way that the animal's stepping, like puts pressure, and depending on what type of ground and the moisture content of it that they're stepping in, sometimes you can get a footprint that looks much larger than the animal actually is. And so I think, it's possibly just an honest mistake by, people that maybe are not used to looking at footprints. You have some of these like paranormal investigators that are eager to latch on to any shred of evidence they can find, right? So they see this human footprint that is abnormally large, but really, I guess this is just me rambling, but I think the footprints I don't think they are faked. I think they were made by, a human and just misattributed to the Yeti, I guess.
That's fair. Having watched the show, I can say that one of them does look very similar to like an orangutan footprint, which is not something you'd expect to see up in the Himalayan mountains, especially around the base camp of K2.
It's a little chilly.
A little bit. But
More
also,
than they're used to.
You need two things for footprints. You need a sand or a mud, and you need sand or soil, and you need moisture to create a mud, right? And growing up where I did, I remember you and we used to go swim in the creek, and our grandfather had this awesome dog. His name was Dingo. Loved that thing. But he would come and look for us if we were away from the house too long. And I noticed when I was young, when a dog steps into the mud and it slides, it'll bring its like elbow down to kind of catch it, and it elongates and almost makes it look humanoid rather than canine.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think it could just be a mistaken identity of an animal slipping in the mud.
It's definitely possible, yeah. Yeah, dogs and canines have an extra pad partway up their wrist. My dogs have actually ripped theirs off a few times catching frisbees and stuff because they use them just like you said, like brake pads. They'll pivot their front arms down and catch those pads, and I could see how that could look like the heel part of a print. Definitely.
Yeah. So as far as footprints, I'm going to say highly unlikely to come from an animal that we don't know.
Yeah. And the pads grow back, by the way. Sorry. I guess I should say that just in case anybody's worrying about the dogs. They grow back. It's normal with dogs that do agility training. So they're all good. I promise.
Yes. It's kind of like a callus. If it rips off, it just comes back thicker.
Yeah. Yep. So how about hair samples? I mean, I know we talked about the ones where they ended up being sourced to other species, but what about other hair samples? Or, I mean, you said it was inconclusive. Is that potentially evidence that it's an unknown species of some kind?
I don't know. In my mind, it could be. Looking at hair, there's a lot of animals that shed hair, especially year round. Um, Up in the mountains, I find hair samples all the time. I usually attribute them to elk or moose. I don't. So is there a possibility that it's an unknown species? There's always a possibility. I'm not going to say that there's no way that this Yeti is dropping hair tufts and that the scalp isn't real, but at the same time, I don't know. It just seems too good to be true. I mean, I hate to say it, but because the evidence that I've seen comes from a TV show, as much as I respect the creators and know that they're trying to do their best science, I also know that TV ratings rule, and it's really easy to grab artificial hair and mix it with something to throw off any DNA tests.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to say probably bunk.
Yeah. I mean, at best, hair from an unknown source, but probably not a Yeti. And at worst, intentional tampering. But
Yeah. I don't know. It is interesting. We kind of covered on photographs, real or faked, and we kind of talked about that from there. Eyewitness. The classic eyewitness.
I don't doubt that there are people. Let me put it this way. I wholeheartedly believe that some of these eyewitnesses really believe that that's what they saw. Like, that's the problem with eyewitness accounts is they're hard to evaluate the truth of, because if a person really believes that that's what they saw, they're not lying when they say that. So eyewitness accounts are not infallible.
It makes me think of that. Think of our Roswell episode where you talked about the truth.
Oh yeah,
the lie detector, and how everybody was like, I know what I saw. I know what I saw. I know what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
They might believe what they saw.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be anything from a trick of the light to some type of undiagnosed mental illness to just stress. I mean, there's been times in my life when I've been in extremely stressful situations, and yeah, sometimes you can't believe what you see. You've got to fall back on like training and muscle memory and stuff for that very reason. When your adrenaline's pumping and you're in a high stress situation, you're taught not to believe what you see. So,
Right. It's the classic seeing water when you're dehydrated in the desert. It's seeing a village in a snowstorm. It's seeing what you want to believe and being so stressed out that you believe it.
mm-hmm.
We could probably go pretty deep into that. Maybe in the future, but
it's the same thing. Like, when, without getting political, if there's like an officer involved shooting, I really believe that 95% of the time that they say, I saw the suspect pull a gun, that's what they thought they saw.
yeah.
And unfortunately, in those situations, our eyes play tricks on us. And that's why we have to rely on training and the people that are there with us. So anyway, bit of a rabbit hole. Sorry.
No, I think that's very fair. As far as eyewitness sites with the Yeti, it's hard because if you going back to the Buddhist and pre-Buddhist traditions, the myth says that if you see a Yeti, It's actually considered a death omen.
Oh, fun.
So these eyewitness testimonies, if you believe in the myths, there really should be no eyewitness testimonies, which is really interesting when you're talking about a mythological being. Like, if you see it and you believe you see it, you can't say it. Otherwise, your local monk is going to believe that you're going to die, which adds a whole new stress. Or you're going to be discounted right out of everything just because you saw something that you wouldn't be alive if you saw. So it's, I don't know.
Kind of a catch-22.
Right. So I guess kind of like what we did with Roswell in our previous conspiracy mythology, like kind of goofy horror themed podcasts. Is it real? Is it supernatural? Is it an actual animal that people are seeing? Or is it fantastical?
Personally, having grown up hunting and spending a lot of time out in the woods, I'm going to go with animal. There have been so many instances when I've been out hunting or hiking and hear something or see something that is an animal, but for some reason it doesn't look like an animal that you know of. It's hard to see through the trees and stuff, and so you start to amp yourself up and your mind starts to play tricks on you and your adrenaline starts going. And so, yeah, I've been there. That's what I think it is, an animal.
Fair. I'm going to say I want to believe that it is an actual species.
You're going to pull the X-Files, huh?
Yeah. But I'm going to go with you. Misidentified animal. I think a bear, an Asiatic brown bear or an Asiatic black bear might be the most likely source. I know black bears, despite the name, can run anywhere from like white to like a cinnamon bay all the way down to black or brown. And so it kind of covers the whole gamut of the types of fur that this creature's reported as seeing or being seen with.
Well, and besides the fact that you can have, snow and mud and all kinds of stuff matted in there in the fur, so it could be all kinds of crazy colors.
Yeah. And as far as the footprint evidence, a black bear's hind paw, in my opinion, especially if it's sliding in the mud a little bit, looks very humanoid to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with that.
So I'm going to say misidentified animal, like you. We didn't even rehearse that. That was...
Just on the same wavelength, I guess.
That's right. I don't know. Anything else to add on the Yeti?
No, I don't think so. Just that, this is, like you said, based on my limited knowledge and experience. So I think we might revisit it a little bit when we talk about Bigfoot later. So I'm really looking forward to doing that episode since I live in Bigfoot country now.
Yeah,
it'd be fun to get into the local mythos. Maybe
Definitely
I'll find someone to take me on a Bigfoot hunt.
Why don't we just go?
That would be fun.
Let's do a... Let's just go and see what we can find. Bring a bunch of cameras, light a fire, and scream at the top of our lungs like the Bigfoot hunters on Finding Bigfoot do.
And hopefully we'll come home to tell you about it.
And if not, our tapes will be found and it'll be like Blair Witch Project. We'll posthumously make millions.
There you go.
Well, with that ending, it was my turn to kind of look for a mindfulness moment, and I decided to do something a little bit different this time. With it being the end of the year, we're recording this on the solstice, which, if you listen to last week's podcast, is kind of a time of reflection. I wanted to try and do a guided meditation, and this is one that I found to help me, especially when I'm like super stressed out. But if you're driving, please don't close your eyes while you're doing this. But we're just going to go ahead and do that. So the goal for this is to kind of give thanks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment and think about something that has blessed your life this year. It could be a family member's birth or reconnection with friends or something good with your job. And as soon as you have it, take a moment and hold it in your mind as you take a deep breath in. And now, as you expel your air, under your breath, just mutter the words, thank you. It doesn't have to be to anybody or anything. Just say thank you. And I have found that just doing this simple technique when I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when things aren't going my way, just thinking about a blessing, putting it in my brain, taking a deep breath in, and exhaling the words thank you, puts me in the right headspace to tackle anything that's causing me stress. So that's our mindful moment today.
Yeah, I like it. That's something I need to take time for more. Just guided meditation, or even just breathing exercises, because it takes less than a minute, and like you said, it can really reshape your frame of mind. Thanks for joining us this week as we took a look at the mythological being known as the Yeti. Join us next week, where we will recap the year, make resolutions for New Year's, and throw out some of our predictions for what 2022 may hopefully look like. Thanks.
As we end today's episode, we both wanted to wish you all a very happy end of the year. No matter what holiday you may or may not be celebrating, we hope that you are filled with the blessings of this season and that your next year will be full of amazement and joy. We will see you in 2022. Do you have a request for a subject that you'd like us to talk about on a future episode? Or is there a particular topic for which you have a passion and you'd love to come on the show as a guest? Either way, send an email to podcast@viewsfromtheworldtree.com or message us through one of our social media accounts, the links to which can be found on our new website, viewsfromtheworldtree.com.